Tech YouTube channels can be some of the most comforting places on the platform. The fun visuals, bouncy music, and exciting future tech is perfect when you just want to watch something positive for a change. Well, don't look behind the curtain, because you may find horrors beyond your imagination. Hi, I'm Austin. You're probably new because over half my subscribers have joined within the past week, and thank you so much. There's been so much unbelievable internet drama lately that I might as well turn this into my full-time job. And today, we're talking about the Linus Tech Tips scandal, how what started as just accusations of misinformation and product review malpractice quickly snowballed into some of the most serious criminal allegations in the history of YouTube. Some quick background for the people that aren't casual nerds like me that watch tech videos like this and pretend to understand what they're talking about. Linus Tech Tips is one of the original tech channels on YouTube, founded all the way back in November 2008. Fast forward to 2023, and they're now at 15.5 million subscribers, 6,500 videos, with even more on all their affiliate channels. The massive YouTube empire now goes by the name LMG, or Linus Media Group, and they have over 120 employees. It's not like this is a small story by any means. So let's get into the controversy. This mostly starts as drama, but at a certain point, we're going to shift into serious allegations. This all started at the end of July when a video was posted in which a Linus Tech Tips employee took a few cheap shots at the competition.
How many of you have seen a review of a component from LTT? You know, like a graphics card or a CPU? Of course. Yeah? This is where it happens. The difference between us and somebody like Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed is we test new components, new tests every time. Every project that we do has new data.
He says during the tour in the video that one of the things setting Linus Tech Tips apart from other content creators in the space like Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed is that Linus Tech Tips collects new test data for every project every time. It's a pretty weird thing to say about like specific peers in the space. It definitely feels like a punching down moment. But hey, maybe he didn't expect that comment to be heard as widely as it did. But with 15 million subscribers behind your company, that's also pretty short-sighted thinking. This prompted Hardware Unboxed, one of the channels targeted, to respond in a Twitter thread a few days later, questioning LTT's credibility and expressing their disappointment in the comment. They wrote, "Oh no, bit of a big oof moment. LTT Labs taking shots. I've rerun more benchmarks than Linus has spent money on testing equipment and staff. If you have to tell everyone how good your testing is, in my 20 plus years of experience, that generally means your testing isn't very good. Your work speaks for itself, guys. That's how you build credibility." Adding on, I should note that both Linus and Luke have been good to us, and they're good guys. This is just very disappointing from an LTT employee. Then they go on to defend Linus in a reply to somebody else, saying, "Yeah, I doubt Linus is okay with that sort of thing." In a reply to another person, they say, "I think he's claiming they update all their comparative data with each review, which we almost do anyway. Every review is unnecessary though." So I don't think Hardware Unboxed made any hard accusations against them, but this interaction definitely was the catalyst for calling LTT's testing quality and credibility into question. 2 days later, on August 4th, Linus and Luke addressed the controversy on their LTT podcast called The WAN Show, which was live streamed. In this stream, Linus, talking about the situation, points out Tim immediately and defends his comment, saying that throughout the day he was repeatedly asked how their testing was different from other peers in the industry, specifically Gamers Nexus and Hardware Unboxed for some reason.
Someone who was here for a tour prior to LTX uploaded a video of their tour, which included Tim from our labs team, who had been asked several times throughout the day about how our testing is different from our peers in the industry like Gamers Nexus and Hardware Unboxed.
Personally, I don't know why anybody would ask that, because nobody would assume that Linus Tech Tips knows anything about what's going on behind the scenes of these smaller YouTube channels. But Linus goes on to explain that what Tim said about them collecting new data for every project is technically true, but
unfortunately, the way that he presented it was not particularly tactful. And I can see how, while he was simply stating a fact, it could have been interpreted the wrong way.
Basically explaining that they'll update data if there's software or driver updates. So Linus says,
strictly speaking, what Tim said was not true, but
then they go on to talk about how LTT should never be making comparisons like this.
I don't think we should ever make a comparison that is, a good thing we do compared to those other guys. If anything, we should be trying to build each other up. We respect Gamers Nexus and Hardware Unboxed a lot, which were the two particular outlets that were referenced by Tim.
And then Linus goes on to shit on his employee Tim more, saying,
Back to Tim's wording, I didn't hire him to be a PR representative, which is good because clearly that's not where his experience is. I hired him to work on mechanical engineering and other engineering tasks as well, which is good because rightly he's really proud of the work that he and the team have been doing, both publicly facing and behind the scenes.
They've been on this segment for less than 3 minutes, and the number of times Linus throws Tim under the bus for a minor mistake is sounding a lot of alarm bells. Then Linus goes on to reiterate in this segment that their testing is better than their peers, and that's what makes LTT different. But other channels may have stuff that they do better.
He also is right that retesting every time is better, and it's something that we're putting a lot of effort and a lot of resources into doing. But that doesn't mean that, other publications don't have things that they're doing that are better than us. So that just shouldn't be the way that we frame it, because obviously everyone is out there trying to do their best and trying to differentiate.
Which is not a route I'd go down right now, man. Just move on from this. And notably, Linus continues by reading a promise statement from the company to do better and strive to meet or raise the bar when it comes to testing. And if corrections are needed,
we will not sweep things under the rug.
Remember that one for later. Then I think this is important context for later too. Linus shares what he thinks about the company.
We're attempting to do this at a scale that, as far as I can tell, has not been done before. And the more cooks you have in the kitchen, the more room there is for miscommunications.
Both Linus and Luke then go on to rant about how there's a toxic environment starting up. It feels like LTT's in an us versus them situation, and starts listing out other channels.
There's like an us versus them attitude that's brewing right now, where it's like content creator versus content creator. Like, I'm team LTT. Like, I don't want that. I'm not asking you for that. Or like, I'm team Jay's 2 cents, or I'm team Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed or whatever. Like, it's I'm kind of at a loss for how to deal with that.
Later in the segment, Linus continues to complain about how much money they spend on doing nice things for people, citing an event recently where they flew out a bunch of small creators for an expo and spent $150,000.
Last week, not even a full week ago, we spent over $150,000 US to fly tech creators from around the world to network with each other and to engage with the community. Like, obviously, for us, they are part of the attraction of the show. But at that cost, that is not even close to a break-even proposition for us. Not even close. We don't even ask them to do anything.
Linus talks about how they burn bridges with NVIDIA after doing a bad video on them, and then loops it all back to how they're on the side of the consumer and how healthy competition between media outlets is good.
My battle lines are clearly drawn. We are on the side of the consumer. We are working together to hold manufacturers accountable, and friendly competition between media outlets, that is good.
But then he makes a weird comment about how sometimes he loves competition too much, and his co-host Luke says it's a lot sometimes, and he looks dead serious.
I love it. I like probably love competition too much, but
it's a lot sometimes.
But I mean, what? How else do we all move forward, Luke?
Linus continues by explaining how doing more and different types of tests than the competition channels can only be good. Then again, notably, he says,
we've literally never done anything to disadvantage another creator. I will not say a bad word. I will not try to prevent anyone from moving up.
Adding on an example of when he got another creator a Steam Deck, and then pats himself on the back about how he just does these things and never talks about it.
I don't talk about this kind of thing because I don't feel like I should talk about it. I should just do it. And my peers in the industry know it. They know I do these things. So if they can't see it, then that's kind of on them at this point.
Then something kind of weird happens. The chat starts asking Linus to address the criticism LTT received about a year ago regarding their LTT store backpack. Back then, the community got angry that there wasn't actually any warranty attached to this backpack. In response to this, Linus replied to somebody on Twitter saying he was going to follow through on his promise and make it right, And that's what he'd do in every situation where this came up. That's a wild thing for a company to promise. Like, do you just expect your customers to get your attention on Twitter every time they want a replacement or get their money back? In the end, the community took this as Linus saying, "Trust me, bro." And in response, LTT mocked their own community on Twitter by saying things like, "Warranty period means nothing. I could just fold the company and you'd be shit out of luck. So at the end of the day, you either trust me to do the right thing or you don't. It doesn't actually make a difference if we have a formal warranty policy." And then continued to argue with community members over whether warranty means anything, stating that there's many ways we could weasel our way out of warranty coverage if we didn't care. You either trust me, bro, or you don't. Which we're going to learn is how he tends to run most of his business. However, the backlash from the community forced LTT to launch a limited lifetime warranty. But not before they launched a very real line of $20 Trust Me Bro warranty t-shirts to directly mock and profit off of the community. The move was so bad, the entire live chat roasted the t-shirt, including LTT's current CTO and podcast co-host, Luke.
Sure. I spent an embarrassing amount of time verifying that this was actually our website, because the first time I ever saw this, someone posted it in Floatplane chat, and I was like, you must be kidding me. There's no way we're actually releasing this. And it's our website. It's definitely it. It's real. I don't think this is a worse idea than making the shirt in the first place, so, you know.
Yeah. All while Linus is cracking up and acting like it's the funniest thing he's ever seen. And if you don't think it could get worse, Linus is caught again in a later podcast episode trying to convince Luke it was a good idea by bragging about how many they sold.
As far as the public can tell, it was asked for by a fan on Twitter. Is that true? Yes, it was actually requested. I thought it was hilarious, and so I did it.
Apple kernel exploit. Didn't hear about it.
He doesn't approve.
No, I don't. But
it's sold really well. People love it. It's a smash hit.
Great then. I don't know. I don't have to like everything that we do. We're a big company at this point.
We sold 100 of them for every person who has said it was childish or petty. I'm serious. It's like not even close.
Well, maybe there's a lot of childish and petty people out there. That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
He just seemed like he'd be so much fun to work for, doesn't he? And Linus somehow just keeps digging a deeper hole in this situation by keep going back to the Trust Me Bro warranty controversy.
Man, the number of people that I feel like thought that we would be willing to tarnish our reputation over like $250 over a replacement backpack was just kind of baffling to me. I don't want to sound out of touch, but in the context of the scale of this operation.
I don't think that was the point. I can't believe we're getting back on this topic.
We're not.
Okay.
But in the context of the scale of this operation, in the context of the damage that it could do to our brand, $250 is nothing.
Right. That's not why people are mad, though.
I think people were mad for a variety of reasons, some valid and some less so.
Okay.
So we can leave it at that.
And Luke is so done with him. Honestly, I think Luke could spill some tea on this whole entire situation. And if he broke off and made his own channel, I would definitely be there. Let the record show, I've always liked Luke until I find out he did something bad, like make a sex joke during their apology video. So let's wrap up the great backpack controversy of August 2022. LTT sold millions of dollars worth of these backpacks, and following the Trust Me Bro warranty backlash, they released this limited lifetime warranty, which you don't have to look at it for very long to realize that this literally won't cover anything. Damages caused by misuse, abuse, or by accident or negligence. This line alone could probably reject 90% of the claims. And each tiny detail listed here would make getting anything replaced a complete nightmare. Why would you not do like a 60-day money-back guarantee or something if you've literally sold millions of dollars worth of these backpacks so far? What kind of person would get a backpack, get some use out of it, and then intentionally take advantage of like a 30 or 60-day return policy? It's a backpack. This limited lifetime warranty is almost exactly the opposite of the Trust Me Bro warranty that Linus was having so much fun making jokes about. Linus, in a later podcast episode, tries to apologize for the entire situation again by using belittling language about himself to gain pity, while saying people assume the worst about him. Luke immediately recognizes the wrong path Linus is going down in his explanation and tries to steer him back to reason.
So it ultimately comes down to trust, no matter what. And I thought you guys saw me the same way, which was kind of heartbreaking, actually. But also eye-opening. The number of people out there who will assume the worst of me just because I let you into my very real and, yes, sometimes flawed thought processes.
I don't think you're necessarily reading this the right way. I don't think it necessarily means that people don't trust you. I think that a lot of people go with the stance of trust but verify. And the verify in this situation would be to have a warranty that they...
I think reacting to mild criticism like this is extremely concerning for somebody that's running a company the size of LTT. And thinking like this would make it extremely hard to approach Linus with any workplace concerns. But let's get back to present day Linus again and see what he had to say regarding the Trust Me Bro warranty situation and creators like Gamers Nexus that covered the story unbiased with their own criticism. Linus calls out these creators for ignoring facts and not taking advantage of personal relationships to get more information before talking about it.
I feel like some of you are not taking quite the right things away from what I said, by the way. There's a fair number of people that are talking about the whole Trust Me Bro situation, where there were some creators that it's pretty clear that not everyone in the creator space handled that super professionally. I don't obviously agree with some of the takes that were out there. I don't think that it's particularly journalistic, for example, to ignore facts, to ignore personal relationships that you have every opportunity to take advantage of to get more information. I don't actually agree with that. I think that's objectively not correct.
Then he says the point is he wants to move on and everyone makes mistakes and they make a lot of mistakes, but he doesn't want to stir up drama.
The point is not to dwell on that. Like, good Lord, that was like, how long ago was that?
It feels like it was quite a while
ago. Who cares? I never even drew attention to any of that intentionally because it doesn't matter. I don't want to stir up drama.
Which is crazy to call basic criticism some big drama. It's only big because you're the largest tech channel doing merch at this scale on the platform, and you're wronging consumers in some way, so you have to own up to the criticism. Not just say, let's all just move forward, it doesn't matter. So following the podcast episode, a whole 10 days passed and nothing really happened with this situation. But then on August 14th, Gamers Nexus posted a nearly 45-minute response video to the LTT employees' comments, as well as what Linus just said on the podcast related to the Trust Me Bro warranty situation. The video titled, "The Problem with Linus Tech Tips," is a detailed breakdown of multiple recent instances in which LTT posted wildly incorrect data or irresponsibly handled the reviews of products in often malicious ways. This is Steve, the man behind the 2 million subscriber channel, Gamers Nexus. Steve starts by acknowledging the comments that the LTT employee made in the lab tour video, as well as the response thread posted a few days later by Hardware Unboxed. He says that Gamers Nexus has yet to comment on the situation, despite LTT claims not actually being true.
We didn't say anything at all, anywhere. Even though it's not actually true, they don't collect new data and new tests every single time, and it's not always necessary anyway.
He then gets into Linus's comments that accused creators like Gamers Nexus of doing journalistic malpractice.
I don't think that it's particularly journalistic, for example, to ignore facts, to ignore personal relationships.
It is my job to ignore personal relationships. Yeah, if LMG is going to make false accusations and wants to try and use personal relationships to gain favor so that we don't cover something we think is not okay, it's not going to work with us. We don't play that game.
And he's right. Tech review channels should only give objective criticism when talking about a product that their audience could buy. Taking into account friendships with people behind those products will only lead to exaggerating the truth in order to save face. Gamers Nexus starts off the crux of this video by stating,
"The first clip from an LTT lab tour caught our attention, but it itself isn't worth commenting on. We have something wider in scope we want to comment on, and it's simply that we believe LTT or LMG is rushing too much to hit arbitrary and largely self-imposed deadlines that are causing frequent and sometimes significant data errors and information errors. And this conflicts with the ramping marketing surrounding accuracy and data-driven objective reviews that they're pushing for from LTT Labs. So
Steve says that by exiting entertainment and entering the space of tactical, data-driven reviews, there needs to be proper work backing everything up. Because now there's a different level of faith people are putting in the material coming out of your channel, and the expectations are different.
And we know these issues at LTT in terms of the rushing, the pushing employees and staff to hit deadlines despite concerns with the data or the collection of the data. We know that these come from top down, as shown in a recent LTT interview that it conducted with its own employees.
Employees say in the video that they wish they could post less and focus more on quality for a bit.
Let's publish less videos.
I wish we could back off the amount and focus on quality for a bit.
More time for projects would be good.
I don't love that we have to release so many videos. I don't know what our current count is weekly, but I know it's very high. Very rarely am I particularly proud of a video I've worked on.
It even goes so far as Linus, who runs the company, reiterating that there's never time for retrospection. It's always just go, go, go.
We never have time for retrospection. It's always just, that's out. What's the next thing?
The employees obviously feel drained and unfulfilled from some of the work, and then you have Linus imposing crunch on everybody, which is only diminishing the quality further. Steve then shows a clip from their June 30th podcast where Linus describes a situation in which the writer on a video asked them to spend more time pulling new results, and in response, Linus said no because it would cost them too much money.
But it was designed for a 3090 Ti. Well, we went for gold and we tried it with a 4090. The temperature results were bad. It was clear that it wasn't making perfect contact, and so Adam was the writer on that project. What Adam asked is if we could spend more time, put the 3090 Ti on it, and get real results. And what I told him was no. Because, and guys, come on. Like, for real, okay? It's $800 US. I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time.
Despite them sometimes pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars per video. Linus, for some reason, is like the anti-Mr. Beast. Instead of spending company money on improving the video quality, Linus just makes his return by denying his workers basic needs. Steve states correctly,
and that's an important indicator of mindset that comes from ownership of the company. We'll come back to that clip later though. They are choosing to publish sometimes known bad or known incorrectly acquired data. That's different from a mistake, which all of us do in fact make, yes.
Steve argues that in the end, these poor quality controls are misleading consumers, whether they're intentional or not. He includes a disclaimer before dropping all the evidence that this is not drama.
This is a very uncomfortable video for me to make. I haven't enjoyed the process of it, but this is something we feel is desperately needed, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. And it is not simply drama to talk about errors and factual testing issues in a way that hopefully brings to light the problems so that the media organization, LMG, can attempt to rectify them if it in fact wishes to do so. We stand to lose a lot here. We risk pissing off people with direct and very valuable and useful to us connections to YouTube.
Steve adds that the company is now over 120 people and is led by a new CEO who has a past of working high up at companies like Dell and Corsair, as well as a current marketing director that came from Asus. And LMG as a whole clearly has the resources to do far better. Okay, so with that, let's actually get into the evidence of the bad data presented by LTT. Steve says that even with the debut of LMG Labs, they're still consistently making errors in nearly every single review video they publish. He says there's enough errors that he can't fit them all into a normal length video, but they'll cover a few of them to establish the premise and explain their concerns. However, all of this evidence was published within the past year. And bear with me, the language might get a little nerdy and technical while we break down what LTT is being criticized for. It all starts with the reviews of the 40 series NVIDIA RTX graphics cards, specifically with their video on the 4090. It included multiple erroneous charts, but one in particular for Cyberpunk 2077 was ridiculous, showing the 4090 outperforming the 3090 Ti from last year by 300%, when in reality it should be closer to 75%. This is a pretty obvious human error, and I feel like it would stick out to any non-tech person if they were looking for it while watching the video, but if it was playing in the background, I probably wouldn't give it a second thought. Steve says most of the other data was relatively consistent, so the outliers should have been more obvious. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was even more bizarre, with the 3090 Ti outperforming the 3090 by 61% when it should be closer to 13%. The flaws are so blatant that for anybody watching with technical knowledge, there's a lack of basic attention to detail. When these flaws were pointed out by the community, it took LTT days to fix it. They didn't think to delete the video, but eventually posted a comment with corrections, but didn't even pin it until people started getting mad. And the comment didn't even correct all the errors, just the Cyberpunk test. Eventually, they were able to swap the video in place for an updated version, but only after 1 million people saw it. There was never enough active outreach to get in front of this bad data and alert those million-plus people that their purchasing decisions may need to be re-evaluated. In another example, during their 4060 review, this chart showed that an A750 is better than an RTX 4060 Ti with ray tracing, which no other public data seemed to support. In their GTX 1060 test in this review, when being compared to the test in their 7600 review video, shows more than a 20% gain despite being the exact same test. And to round out the bad data section of this critique video, Steve describes another instance where LTT used the wrong data for both the 4060 and 4060 Ti videos, even after having to issue a post-upload correction the first time they made the mistake, saying,
LTT had already corrected this once before, which indicates to us that they are once again lacking the proper processes to ensure learned lessons carry forward, which once again starts to become reckless, irresponsible, and concerning for a company branding itself in this position.
Going on to explain that this inconsistency in data is further proven in a CPU cooler test video where obvious misinformation is being spread, which could easily have been spotted if anybody gave it a second look. He goes on to show more examples of blatantly wrong CPU test data, which he can tell is due to setting up the test wrong.
There is absolutely no way with these CPUs that these results can deviate this much without error in the testing process.
In multiple other instances, LTT posted abnormal data claiming it was due to a weird software situation, but Gamers Nexus was unable to achieve similar results every time they tried. Steve says,
and it's not proper to just blame the product because you don't want to control your test environment and you don't want to use it the way it's designed. This point alone calls all data into all of these charts into question.
In some situations, incorrect data is being shared in regards to products that they have close ties with, and products are being recommended more highly than they should be.
We're a bit baffled by how huge the endorsement was for the Noctua NHD 15 given their own data, but Noctua has close ties with LTT, so that may subconsciously be influencing the interpretation. And even if it's not, it's still unfair to Noctua because now it's calling into question a positive comment because of those ties. That's why it cuts both ways when you have a conflict this deep. It's not just advertising anymore.
His final point in the CPU cooler section goes over their review for the Peerless Assassin, which LTT tested backwards, blaming the lack of instructions. Gamers Nexus also suspects that there is a mounting issue due to the 10-degree difference between the max and average temperatures, adding that
a good lab methodology would have redundancies for redundancies to safeguard against human error or perceived instructions error.
Okay, so moving on from CPU coolers, which I'm sure you think about all the time. Steve shares a recent example where Linus got the model of a power supply they were reviewing wrong, mixing up two different models with drastically different quality levels. However, he commends them for pinning a correction comment pretty quickly, while still adding that
pinning a correction is the right move, and they haven't always immediately done that, like we saw with the 4090 review. So that's an improvement, but they need to at least get these basic attention to detail items right. This isn't even the hard part.
Jumping into the CPU reviews, Gamers Nexus quickly locates a series of lies told during the 5600X review, in which
the video host states, quote,
the lab put it through its paces,
indicating this is a piece that the lab specifically contributed to, which is marketed on accuracy.
Then immediately after, showing graphics on screen with incorrect numbers across the board. This lack of interest in reporting correct data continued in LTT's review of the 7950X3D. They blamed a bad CPU for their delay in uploading, but Steve notes what seemed weird through the entire video is they seemed hyper worried about trying to get more specific testing data than what AMD is advertising. even when those differences are just single-digit percentages off.
If you're trying to nail the exact differences down to a single % of a first-party claim, then you aren't providing any value as a third-party reviewer. AMD might as well publish its own review. It's not weird at all to have a few percentage points different, or even upwards of 30%. They make the thing. They're going to test it in ways that benefit them.
It makes way more sense to consistently test the product and compare it to the competitors rather than spend resources trying to out-test the manufacturer. Steve then shows a clip noting LTT's concern for the opinion of their peers when it comes to reviews, stating,
"They shouldn't be worried about what everyone else is saying in a popularity contest. They should be worried about reporting the truth of their own findings and then trying to explain them if they're different."
Then he wraps up the CPU review portion by showing LTT's email to AMD contains multiple abnormal claims that indicate the team's lack of experience when it comes to understanding the manufacturer's testing process. Okay, so breathe for a second. We made it out of all the nerdy technical speak, and we can get back to the criticism that doesn't make my head hurt from just trying to understand what they're saying. The next section, Steve breaks down multiple instances of asterisk errors. He notes that
you can't do text on the screen anymore in YouTube after you upload, so all of this is done before the upload, which means that when doing an asterisk correction, a creator is aware of that correction.
Oftentimes, these asterisk errors are far bigger than a one-sentence text correction. In the first case,
in one instance, LTT states that the keys have, quote, stickers.
Curiously cheap printing on some of the keycaps. Look
Actually,
at this.
it's double shot PBT.
Yeah, they're double shot except where they put stickers on them.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yikes.
Despite the correction, the negative sentiment's still fully displayed in the video, so you'd have to catch the small text correction to even know they weren't stickers. Then, later in the same video, Linus gets another asterisk error for a 1-second clip where he calls the graphics card by the wrong name.
And a 4070 Ti, meaning we should be able to get some pretty good gaming performance out of this thing.
But the editors add an asterisk that says, not TI.
Something that could easily have been re-recorded. Steve relates these quick corrections back to the earlier talked about LTT employee interview, where they admit they're moving so fast that they don't have time to properly go back and correct something. This is a huge problem for a company that's built on the back of testing and reviewing products. Steve brings up another example from just last week where LMG's Tech Quickie channel covered large language model hardware, and within the just under 5-minute video, they had on-screen text correcting 312 teraflops to 624. Especially in this circumstance, it would have been extremely easy for the host to sit down and just re-record the line. This is just further proof that the company's rushing its content and unable to slow down for even a single sentence. Something that wouldn't be such a big issue if they weren't marketed on being a reliable source. But this is a company with the resources to do things right. Now we can move on to the last chunk of the Gamers Nexus video. Steve describes a few recent situations that call into question the ethics of LTT as it relates to their corporate connections, their flow of money, and the potential bias as a result of those things. He notes that they've been looking into this, so there may be more to come in a future video. But some of these concerns stem from how Linus has personally invested $200,000 into the laptop maker framework, and yet he's still reviewing their products and competitor products. Also, LMG has a cross-branded screwdriver with the company Noctua, while they're also reviewing Noctua products favorably, even when it's shown by their own data to be hitting 100 degrees Celsius.
Which becomes problematic for brands like Noctua as well, because now it is less clear if the praise is genuine or if it is biased, whether intentional or unintentional.
But Gamers Nexus says they won't be getting into all these corporate connections concerns in this video because
we're going to focus on the consequences of irresponsible reporting and bad data and how that influences the purchasing decisions of millions of people.
First situation has to do with a product review published on June 24th. It's a video about a copper water block made by a small company called Billet Labs, founded just last year by 2 people. LTT took one of the company's first prototypes to test, valued in the thousands of dollars for manufacturing. In the video, LTT had the genius idea of sticking this special 3090 Ti water block on an RTX 4090. I don't know anything about what this thing does, but to me it sounds stupid to connect a block of water to the wrong thing inside of your computer. So they did this despite the company never telling LMG that it would be 4090 compatible, wildly misrepresenting the product as it would literally not fit properly. Steve states that
LTT's presentation goes down the path of being irresponsible, presenting the product as much more difficult to work with than it would be if used properly. The conclusion is,
Like, it's a cool product, but it's a bad product.
It looks great.
Yeah, it looks super cool.
Are you just saying
People
it's
say, I don't
bad
think
just purely because of the price?
It's bad because it makes absolutely no sense and nobody should buy it. Most of the community is actually really amazing. But there's a vocal minority that looks at something like that and goes, lazy, out of touch, whatever else. No, I'm just really experienced at this.
You got it.
Crap.
Did you put it in backward?
Get a shot of that. Look at that.
acting like this when reviewing a product is dangerous when it goes unchecked, and it can needlessly harm a small company or kill somebody's life work in a heartbeat. One of the founders commented under the video saying, using a 4090 with the 3090 Ti block leaves a gap of around 1mm over the die, so it's never going to cool properly. Going on to say, it was difficult to watch their criticisms when pretty much every design issue that Linus raised was done for a reason, which was all explained to Adam weeks ago. None of which, I guess, was fed back to Linus. We also sent a full instruction manual that seemingly wasn't used. I think there's definitely been a major communication breakdown along the video pipeline. We assumed we'd have a chance to answer any problems that were raised and explain them before it was publicly misrepresented. Following this, the community complained about the improper review, and Linus went on to recklessly double down and bash the company's product further.
Nothing would have changed. Nothing that obeys the laws of physics would have changed the conclusion. If the GPU had been 5 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 10 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion. If it had been 20 degrees cooler, that would have been the conclusion.
Again, Luke had to speak up and be the voice of reason.
I also get not wanting to retest, but I do think probably just testing it with the thing that they knew it worked with in the first place probably would have made sense. Because like you're saying, the test result itself doesn't matter. But if it's just supposed to look cool, then it should be seated properly so it looks cool.
With Linus again getting worked up and ranting about being criticized for something minor. It's one thing for Linus to react like this in the face of criticism. It's immature and represents poor leadership skills. But it's another thing for that immature reaction to then be the fuel for targeting a completely innocent small company of just 2 guys. He continues ranting by explaining that it wouldn't be worth spending a few $100 to just test it properly.
But I'm not... I don't know, guys. I'm not sure if I can apologize for not spending another $100, $200, $300, $500 of various people's time sitting and engineering a workaround to a product that no matter the result, nobody should buy.
Product would still be trash no matter what. What Linus is saying here is clearly malicious, and he intends to harm the company's sales in some way by doing so. All just to save face about how reliable his reviews actually are. Steve goes on to explain that,
making matters worse, in conversations with Billet Labs, Gamers Nexus learned that the company asked for the prototype back on June 28th.
Since then, LMG has agreed at least twice to return the product, first agreeing on June 30th.
At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its Extra Life auction event, without the permission of Billet Labs.
And they didn't even learn about this until August 11th, at which point they were told the block was gone. Billet told Gamers Nexus that the company's now stalled as it no longer has its best prototype available for continued development. No one knows where the product even ended up, and it could very well be shipped off to a competitor and copied from. This is by far one of the more egregious offenses done by LTT so far in the story. They knowingly misrepresented a small company's product, then doubled down maliciously after being called out for being wrong. It's a completely irresponsible and dangerous way to be running one of the largest tech channels on the platform. It's behavior you might expect from a faceless drama YouTuber under 50k subs, but not from one of the largest voices in the industry. In the final example presented in this video, Steve goes over a recent review from LTT on the Pwnage Stormbreaker mouse. In the video, an LTT store employee gives an over-exaggerated negative review about how not smooth the mouse is.
This is not a smooth mouse, and that's really disappointing.
especially on like a premium gaming mouse. That should be one of the primary focuses.
The company followed up by reaching out to notify LTT that they had not removed the protective film from the bottom of the mouse. Linus then responded in a later podcast, noting that they added a pinned comment to say, in fact, that there weren't any stickers on the mouse during testing.
The bigger issue here is that our initial correction, which was posted, said, hey, no, it is high friction, and we did test it, and there were no films on the feet.
This caused Pwnage to reply in a tweet fairly criticizing the credibility of the channel. Eventually, in classic LTT fashion, they updated the video to remove the glide part while making an edit to the pinned comment that the plastic film actually was still on the mouse when the initial test was done. Despite this, they still chose to leave the review live, knowing the conclusions were partially derived by wildly misrepresenting the product's main selling point.
The only question that remains is, am I recommending you buy this product? No.
And despite being wrong, they still found time to throw Pwnage under the bus for not labeling that the film was there. To me, professional reviewers should probably learn how to properly unbox and test a product, rather than act like boomers and complain that their bad faith review is due to their inability to think for a second about how to use something the right way. Steve from Gamers Nexus finishes out this video with a few points regarding the mentality of Linus Media Group.
All of this is ethically unacceptable. They like to brand their short circuit stuff as unboxings, or in other words, not reviews. But it's disingenuous to hide behind that whenever there's a mistake.
Especially in the cases of wildly misrepresenting the very features the mouse and water block were marketed on. Choosing to leave these blatantly incorrect videos up has a hugely negative impact on the reputations of these small companies.
Linus Media Group is massive. That has to be treated responsibly. There are correct actions. It should result in some sort of immediate trigger, like a removal of the video with a follow-up saying, we did it again, here's the new results.
The damage from how these reviews were handled can be seen as Steve shares some of the comments from the videos, which are blindly defending LMG's position. The video ends with the conclusion that what Linus Media Group is doing is completely unfair to both consumers and companies. The way LMG reacted to each company defending themselves in a completely valid way indicates a major issue in the way LMG is handling their product reviews.
They affect the purchasing decisions of millions of people, and they brand themselves as an unbiased, for the people outlet.
Despite acting carelessly with the data and partnering with products and categories that have a conflict of interest to their objective reviews. So those were the main takeaways from the Gamer Nexus video, the problem with Linus Tech Tips. What do you think so far? It's a lot to chew on, but at this point in the story's development, I wasn't really anticipating uncovering this controversy. Obviously, there are some bad business practices going on at Linus Media Group. They're rushing videos, which has led to bad data reporting, and in the face of criticism, Linus has often doubled down rather than owned up to their mistakes. But that's not necessarily in the realm of internet drama. It's more just legitimate criticism, and I don't think anything Gamers Nexus said in their video is claiming anything other than what people can just straight up see by watching the videos themselves. But in true Linus fashion, he came back and responded in a massive forum post expressing disappointment and alleging journalistic malpractice against Gamers Nexus. He starts by saying, "There won't be a big WAN show segment about this or anything. Most of what I have to say, I've already said, and I've done so privately." He says, "To Steve, I expressed my disappointment that he didn't go through proper journalistic practices in creating this piece, claiming that he could have asked Linus or the team for context, like the fact that they didn't sell the water block, but rather auctioned it for charity." Adding, "We have already agreed to compensate Billet Labs for the cost of their prototype," which is completely not the issue, and it doesn't resolve that situation in the slightest. Billet Labs is still indefinitely paused while they're trying to produce a whole new prototype, all because your company acted in a completely illegal way that sold off their IP. He says in the next paragraph that he stressed to his team the importance of diligence in their work because there's so many eyes on them, saying they have a lot of work to do on internal processes and communications. Then he addresses the community saying, "We know that we're not perfect. We wear our imperfection on our sleeves in the interest of ensuring that we stay accountable to you. But it's sad and unfortunate when this transparency gets warped into a bad thing." Yeah, Linus, I don't know what you're talking about. Making obvious errors when testing and reviewing products can't just get swept under the rug by saying you wear your imperfection on your sleeve. But he goes on to completely sidestep the clear evidence of errors by saying they pin comments and add on-screen text corrections because they're striving for transparency and improvement. He continues to write off the many examples of them putting incorrect data on screen by saying it doesn't materially change the recommendation. Then he has the audacity to write, "If you haven't seen the improvement, frankly, I wonder if you're really looking for it." As if he's not responding to a 44-minute video displaying example after example of them using bad data intentionally. But wait, his response gets worse, because he writes, "With all of that said, I still disagree that the Billet Labs video is an accuracy issue. We could have retested it with perfect accuracy, but to do so properly would have been impossible, and also didn't affect the conclusion of the video." Saying, "I wanted to evaluate it as a product, and as a product, it still wouldn't make sense to buy. So from my point of view, retesting it and finding out that, yes, it did in fact run cooler made no difference to the conclusion. So it didn't really make a difference." This entire rebuttal feels like it was written by a high school sophomore in debate class. He goes on to bash Billet Labs further, comparing the product to a supercar, writing, "It doesn't matter if no one watching will buy it, they just want to see it rip. Clearly my bad. But my intention was never to harm Billet Labs. I specifically called out their incredible machining skills because I wanted to see them create something with a viable market for it, and was hoping others would appreciate the fineness of the craftsmanship even if the product was impractical." Jesus, Linus. Learn how to not give a backhanded compliment. He continues, "Either way, I'm sorry I got the community's priorities mixed up on this one, and that we didn't show Billet in the best light. Our intention wasn't to hurt anyone. We wanted no one to buy it, because it's an egregious waste of money, no matter what the temps it runs at. And we wanted Billet to make something marketable, so they can, eat." Somebody needs to take Linus's phone away and replace it with like a PR manager. Because holy shit, how do you respond to obviously being in the wrong like this? This isn't an apology in the slightest, and his opinions on the situation are still clearly influenced by his emotions, rather than taking into consideration any of the facts presented. He says, "With all of this in mind, it saddens me how quickly the pitchforks were raised over this. It also comes across as a touch hypocritical when some basic due diligence could have helped clarify much of it." It's incredible how much Linus manages to kick and scream every single time there's any minor criticism of his company. "I have a long history of meeting issues head on, and I've never been afraid to answer questions, which lands me in hot water regularly, but helps keep me in tune with my peers and with the community." If by meeting issues head on, you mean adding on-screen text corrections, pinning comments, and mocking your own community, then sure, you have a super long history of meeting issues head on. He finishes up the post with more baby language, saying, "Will the 'it was a mistake and they're taking care of it' reality manage to have the same reach? Let's see if anyone actually wants to know what happened. I hope so, but it's disheartening seeing how many people were willing to jump on us here. Believe it or not, I'm a real person, and so is the rest of my team. We are trying our best, and if what we are doing was easy, everyone would do it. Today sucks. Linus, you're 36 years old. Why do you whine about people pointing out your company's errors like this? You aren't some teenager running a YouTube channel. You have over 120 employees whose lives are impacted by your demonstrated inability to actually look inward and improve upon your content. People aren't slinging mud trying to create drama online. They're merely calling you out for misleading the same audience that watches their videos. If you claim to like competition so much, why don't you actually get better?" This subpar apology from Linus prompted Gamers Nexus to create another 12-minute segment in their video the very next day, reacting to the forum post. He starts by saying,
Linus hastily posted a statement about 3.5 hours after our video went live. The video raised concerns again about an incredibly large amount of testing inaccuracy issues, alongside what we believe to be unethical actions and just issues with responsibility as a large outlet in general.
He calls Linus's statement
an unhinged, unapologetic rant where he shirks responsibility and blames others.
Which is pretty on par with what I thought about it. He mentions Linus is playing weird semantic games by saying, "We didn't sell the Billet Labs product, we auctioned it." Then Steve comments on Linus tripling down on the Billet Labs situation.
"We could have retested it with perfect accuracy, but to do so would have been impossible," is nonsense. And it's very difficult to engage with nonsense. I don't know what that means.
Thank God he also thought this paragraph was nonsense. I felt like I was going crazy just sitting here trying to understand what Linus was saying. Then Steve points out that Linus largely ignores all of the criticism they made related to LTT's data reporting problems, other than the usual platitudes of we wear our imperfection on our sleeves in the interest of ensuring that we stay accountable to you. But he fails to explain what happened or how they'll actually fix it. Steve labels the response as
Is immature, it's blaming others, and it's irresponsible to the community they've built.
So for the main point of this video, Gamers Nexus wants to clear up more information around the Billet Labs situation. He says,
First of all, we're not going to argue the semantics about an item being sold against the will of a company versus being auctioned, and being for charity, which we already said, doesn't make that better. It makes it worse, because now you're roping in an innocent third party into a very awkward situation.
But furthermore, Steve replays the first video, proving that he originally said correctly that the block was up for auction.
At LTX, Linus Media Group put the one-of-a-kind water block up for auction at its Extra Life auction event.
Then he calls out a line in the apology that uses subversive language to make it seem like Billet Labs and LMG came to an agreement about compensation for the prototype. Steve then provides further context after reaching out to Billet Labs asking if they agreed on a dollar amount for the prototype. They responded, "No, absolutely not. No, no, no." The only mention of any money to do with the prototype was our response to them after they said they'd auctioned it. And we basically said, you know, that was a really expensive prototype, stating the dollar amount it was worth. Also adding, you plan to reimburse us for this. And they heard nothing back. They didn't get a response until the Gamers Nexus video. That is just absolutely unbelievable. A tech channel this big could post a bad review and then carelessly auction off the one-of-one prototype, only to ignore the company that you promised to send the prototype back to in the first place. My man Mark S. Brownlee would never do this. Never. Billet says they received an eventual follow-up email from LMG about 3 hours after Gamers Nexus posted their video, around the time of the Linus forum apology. So Linus wrote the email to Billet and posted at the same time saying that they've already come to an agreement on how to compensate for the prototype, which is completely not true. Gamers Nexus got a hold of the original emails and put together a timeline of when LMG promised to return the prototype. On June 30th, they agreed to ship back their block and the 3090 Ti, following up on July 6th to confirm that. Then on July 12th, LMG sent another update saying that it should be sent sometime within the next week. The next time it was seen was a couple weeks later on July 30th at the Linus Tech Tips Expo Extra Life auction. In early August, the LMG team came back and actually said, so there was a communication mishap and we ended up auctioning off the monoblock in a silent auction for charity at LTX. Good news is that it isn't just sitting on a shelf. Like, what kind of a response is that? They didn't even say sorry, much less offer to actually rectify the situation. Linus continued to comment on the agreement in forum posts despite Billet Labs never emailing him back and offering him a quote in the first place. As of August 14th, Billet says, he's emailed us and we haven't emailed back. We thank the community for their support. We stand by everything that we've said publicly. Sharing this short post on their company pages. Steve goes on to talk about how Linus's confusing sentence structure regarding the Billet Labs agreement is the reason why he needs to be overly careful and objective when reporting these things to viewers. If he were to actually take Linus's advice here, he'd probably be fed misinformation, as that's pretty much how they actually respond to any criticism they face. He mentions that just like dealing with a big company like Walmart or Alienware, they don't need to reach out for comment because the company is so big that they're already harming consumers actively. Steve says,
they have objective errors that we covered objectively, and they involved serious ethical concerns, which we raised. And rather than addressing those, he's choosing to try and distract viewers by whining about us, not allowing him to comment first.
He adds,
I am exceptionally disappointed in this response. I am baffled that this was the path chosen. I don't know. I don't know how to respond to this circular deflecting nonsense.
If LTT releases a new PR-inspired comment after this and goes on another rant, we probably won't be responding. This was LMG's chance to take responsibility, and he's shown LMG's true colors and what he as an owner really thinks. We're greatly disappointed at the tripling down rather than proposing future-looking solutions. At this point, we wouldn't believe them if they released a new statement to try and undo this one, because it's clear to us what the company's owners thought of these issues. And I agree with the Gamer Nexus reaction here. I think the apology was more of an emotionally fueled rant, and it's entirely immature for a company to be acting this way over objective criticism. But that concludes the Gamers Nexus versus Linus Media Group saga. What do you think about everything Gamers Nexus brought up, and do you think it's valid criticism? But don't let me know in the comments, because yes, this far into the video, we're finally getting to the good stuff. And by good stuff, I mean the most awful things you could ever imagine. This is where I have to put a massive disclaimer warning. Controversy is going to take a serious turn, and various triggering topics are going to be brought up. This includes talk of self-harm, derogatory language against women and LGBTQ+ groups, and workplace abuse and harassment. We're pretty far into the video, so please, if you have it on in the background, take proper precautions if needed. So, the Gamers Nexus follow-up video we just covered was posted on August 15th. Immediately, Linus Media Group is scrambling behind the scenes to craft up one of the most tone-deaf apologies you've ever seen on YouTube. But before that could come out, at 2 a.m. Eastern Time on August 16th, a former LTT social media employee and independent content creator named Madison posted a thread on their Twitter page describing example after example of abuse and harassment she faced while working at LTT. The thread begins, "To stop the speculation and DMs I'm receiving, I chose to quit my role at LTT because it and the working environment I was facing were ruining my mental health." She first describes how overworked she was in her social media role, being required to post 3 tweets, 2 Instagram posts, and 2 TikToks minimum per day, all while also being expected to plan, film, edit, and post 2 Floatplane exclusives per week, which is kind of like their version of Patreon. This included getting people to be in the videos, even when those people are also struggling to get their work done. On top of all this, she was also expected to manage, plan, come up with, execute, get approval for, and schedule out all sponsored content on socials outside of YouTube, all while being told not to complain because her job was the fun job. You can't say what it's like now, but they have an entire team working on what she was expected to accomplish alone. She never came out about what happened to her at LTT because she feared even more backlash from a community that was already attacking, defaming, and sending her death threats. She also feared for her future given LTT's size and connections. And this is only referring to the abuse related to the job requirements that were placed on her. He goes on to describe legitimately criminal allegations. And if LTT is going to survive this at all, they're going to need to purge more than a few people. He says, "My time at this company brought my mental health to an all-time low. I could talk to anyone around me during my employment and they would confirm it. I would not have recommended anyone I knew to work there, especially with my experiences as a woman in the office. I was consistently belittled by certain members of upper management. My work was called dog shit. I was called incompetent. When I would reach out to managers and try to get help with these situations, I would be told to put on my big girl pants and be more assertive." That's not surprising in the slightest that they act like this behind the scenes. From the way we've seen Linus act just throughout this video, I can only suspect that there's a toxic culture full of insecure people at the company. If he responds publicly to mild criticism by whining and using confusing, vague language to placate his community, it can only mean that leadership within the company is treating the people below them whose salaries they're paying even worse. He continued, "After enough complaints from me, I was pulled into a meeting. In that meeting, the writer's room was pointed to and I was asked, 'Do you think any of these people would have a hard time getting a job?' I said no, keeping in mind that this was about a month into working there. I was then pointed to and asked, 'What about you?' I was scared. I remember asking, 'Are you going to fire me?' I was laughed at and told to stop being so pessimistic, as if my job and ability hadn't been vaguely threatened. I was then asked to agree to a verbal no-drama contract. That verbal part is important." Yeah, I mean, that's a lot more than just vaguely threatened. The managers at LTT seem like they're on a power trip. Madison states that this verbal no-drama contract came very shortly after she'd come forward stating that she'd been inappropriately grabbed multiple times in the office, among other issues. As thanks for that, they barred her from being in videos from then on out with no explanation for the community. That's real nice, Linus. You're hiring and paying people to grab other employees during work hours. You must be glad that you spent all that money on the huge new lab warehouse. It's way more room for your managers to grope employees in. He says there's a perplexing fear that people will leave LTT and start their own thing if given a platform. So if that platform could threaten negative things coming out about your company or you probably want to squash it too. In my experience, there is a belief that everything you accomplish, no matter how much is created by your own effort, is actually due to Linus giving you a platform. This is what I was told when I moved from Arizona to Vancouver to take this job. After it was publicly announced by Linus that he would be hiring me without my knowledge or consent of the situation, and also before I was even offered the job or shown the salary, I agreed and signed the employment contract. I had asked and been told during my interviews that I would be allowed to monetize my YouTube channel and be allowed to join Floatplane in exchange for shutting down my Patreon. Once I moved, I was presented with an entirely new contract and handbook that I was not told existed. It detailed that I was given incorrect information and would actually have to make changes to my plans if I wanted to continue being employed at LTT. This was after I had moved entire countries and given up my visa status. I couldn't just go back. I later went to Linus about this and stated that the effort to remediate the situation wasn't sitting right with me. He told me perhaps I should change my priorities. He was, in this instance, referring to the fact that my brother had suddenly passed away not even a week before I moved for this job, and that perhaps I should just ignore that and I had been misled because that was more important. I cannot tell you how upset I felt in this moment. Oh my God, Linus. Like, I can't believe you run a company. I've yet to see him treat anybody around him like an actual human. It just seems like he's an insecure, power-hungry leader who clearly isn't in control of shit and is just letting managers abuse and harass employees. She goes on saying, the opportunities LTT presented to me were nothing in comparison to the day-to-day issues I faced. It didn't matter if I spoke to somebody with evidence of an abuse of power or inappropriate workplace behavior. It was considered tattletaling. I was actually called a tattletale. I was told I was bossy when I was trying to be assertive, like I was asked to do. I was told I was arguing when I was trying to discuss my point of view. I was told to calm my tits, stop being such a bitch, and other comments to similar effects. Men are freaks, but like, how are you going to be a man working for a social media channel in the 2020s using phrases like calm your tits? Genuinely go on a hike somewhere and don't come back. There were numerous instances of misinformation being given to me purposely to negatively impact my work. I only know this because coworkers would tell me they overheard the actual information I should have been given. It felt like a horrible teenage drama movie. That is actual psychological abuse. Imagine going to work every day and just being fed lies. But you have to go along with it and finish your work to get paid. The Linus Tech Tips channel is the furthest thing from transparent. She describes the company's work from home situation. Work from home was a whole issue. If you took 3 minutes to answer a personal email, you could get in trouble, which happened to her. There's a system of micromanaging and a level of distrust because the amount of content they have to push out daily is so insane, no one gets a break. I would lose my mind. If a manager ever got mad at me over taking 3 minutes to reply to an email, I'd dox him on the LTT main page. She goes on to describe a self-harm incident completely brought on by the motivations of the company. I remember getting told off for taking my sick days, as in the days you're entitled to. This no days off grind set culminated in the real moment I realized I had to leave. I purposely cut my leg open so badly I would have to go to the ER to get it stapled back together. It was genuinely the only way in my mind to take a day off without being harassed for a reason why. That's horrific. I hope Linus Media Group faces legitimate consequences for all of the blatantly illegal actions that they've taken against Madison and likely dozens of their other employees. I hope in the coming days, with the internal and third-party investigations going on at LMG, which we'll talk about soon, the victims of this company feel safe enough to come forward and share their experiences so LMG can be exposed for who they've really been this entire time. She says, I had spoken to managers about how I was struggling and how the workload was too much for one person. But I was belittled and told, you just have bad time management skills. I was not treated fairly, and in the moment, I couldn't even see that because I was told I was the problem by the people I had looked up to for years. I had coworkers coming to me saying, didn't like how you were treated. I'm glad you got out. And only then did I realize that it wasn't me. That's truly just textbook abuse. I really commend Madison for coming forward and confronting her abusers in this way. And I hope it empowers others to come forward and identify who these predators actually are. The world is unfairly balanced against women, especially in a toxic workplace environment. She writes, I'm still scared shitless of what the response will be, since I am a woman and have already been called dramatic. I'm not stating what happened to me because I'm seeking clout. I'm stating it because it's been eating away at me for 2 years. From the stories Madison shared so far, it's impossible to write off these experiences as untrue. Nobody would be able to lie in this much detail about trauma they personally experienced. She continues, there are genuinely amazing, compassionate, and incredibly intelligent people who work at this company and are driven to just share the cool tech they love. It sucks that ego and a bottom line are slowly destroying some of them and hurting the entire reputation of the company. Yeah, I feel like there's been some extremely talented faces that I've seen come across their videos over the past couple years. And it feels weird that they're restrained from speaking out about the company, and I know many of them could go on to create their own thing outside of LMG if given the opportunity. Madison then describes how the company preys on young people who don't know any better and seem to get away with this over and over. I was at my dream job, and they spoke to me like I was nothing. I can't express to you how worthless I felt. She confirms that the anonymous Glassdoor review that was posted to the LTT company page about a year ago was her, saying it's because it was the only way she could safely express anything that had happened to her. In the past, she'd been crucified by fans sticking up for Linus. In the anonymous Glassdoor post from July 2022, she gives a short overview of the mistreatment she faced while at the company, listing no proper HR system, sexist remarks, coded language, and harassment were common, including discussion about employees' bodies, appearance, clothes, and wealth. Upper and middle management frequently misuses power. The HR team was also upper management. Feedback was consistently harsh and non-constructive. Inappropriate language was commonly used while giving feedback. Unbiased third parties were never present or easily able to be requested for these meetings. Outside ventures were frequently frowned upon or limited by the company. In response to his community asking about the review, Linus wrote, for obvious reasons, there won't be an official statement disclosing private details about my dealings with any of the current or former staff. On a separate note, no NDA or other agreement can prevent a Canadian from reporting workplace mistreatment, including harassment, discrimination, or unlawful termination. They can post it publicly, submit a statement to the authorities, or do both for good measure. Adding, as long as it was true, it wouldn't be defamatory. If I'm ever actually accused of a crime or other misdemeanor, including any violation of employment law, I'm sure you'll read all about it on Dexerto. For now, it appears that we're in the clear. Yeah, that's the most guilty thing I've ever heard. If he's so busy worried about being canceled by Dexerto, you gotta wonder how many skeletons he has hiding in the LMG closets. Why would his response to genuine company criticism be, well, no one's come out against us, so we did nothing wrong? Madison goes on to describe even more unbelievably disgusting instances of workplace harassment and abuse. I was asked about my sexual history, my boyfriend's sexual history, how I like to fuck. I was told that certain issues were sexual tension and I should take the coworker out on a coffee date to ease it out. I was asked to twerk for a coworker at one point. I was told I was chunky, fat, ugly, stupid. I was called the R word. I was called the F slur. And at any point, if I brought up these comments, I would get told, oh, we'll have a chat with them. And nothing ever came of it. The day I handed in my notice was when somebody who constantly overstepped me, misled what I was working on and who I was, said to me, I think the reason you try to be funny is because you lack any other skills. Smiled and then walked away. I quit 15 minutes later. This company sounds like an absolute nightmare. And this is run by a guy who, if you didn't hear, just found out at age 35 that the hard R refers to the N word and not the R word. She continues detailing more highly illegal things that they made her do. I was also the one tasked with managing the OnlyFans account, something I said I didn't want to do. I had to read comments from people talking about how they wanted to fuck me and my coworkers. I saw people's dicks and vaginas. I said no and was told only a little longer. Why the hell does Linus Tech Tips have an OnlyFans account? And you're making your employees run that. That's unreal. Lock this man up. Like, no wonder they switched CEOs a few months ago. Linus obviously needed a fall guy for when all of this came out. In terms of her personal content, Madison says LMG forced her to have them as her representation for any sponsors on her personal Twitch or YouTube channels. Originally, she had been told she just had the okay deals with them for non-compete issues. Then they changed it up on her when she moved to take the job. They prevented her from seeking out any companies to bring her brand deals or sponsorships, all while doing nothing to actually represent her or bring her deals themselves. They were just going to take the traffic she worked for and take a cut of every deal. Absolutely predatory behavior. On top of this, the cut they calculated was before budgeting the cost of supplies for the videos Madison was making, which was included in the contract. Meaning that for a long time, LMG was holding back thousands of dollars worth of pay totally illegally from one of their employees. Eventually, they returned the money that came about because of the miscalculation, only after she noticed it and called them out for it. She describes the situation more. For example, a company's paying you $600 and $100 they're giving you to specifically spend on their platform for the content. The cut LTT was trying to take was of the total $700 and not the $600 that was the actual payment, saying that she had to talk to multiple people before this was rectified. Absolutely insane behavior from the data-driven tech guys. She goes on to list more instances of harassment, saying, also, apparently some managers didn't like me because I hadn't gotten drunk with them before, which was said in a haha just joking, but I'm actually serious tone. These managers sound like they've never talked to or seen a woman before. Why are all these 30-year-old social media people going through their high school phases now? And I forgot to talk about this during the initial recording, but she describes this incident involving Linus where after she'd come forward about being assaulted, somebody accused Linus of inappropriate conduct on Twitter. Following that, he came over to her corner and started berating her, calling the woman on Twitter insane, mentally ill, an attention seeker, and just digging into this poor woman who had felt wronged by him. Absolutely unreal behavior from Linus, but not the most surprising reaction. He continues to give examples of multiple situations in which basic workplace requests were ignored for months, saying, also, remember the corner I was in? People would sneak up on and try to scare me. After the incident, I was nervous about this, so I requested a mirror so I could see behind me. I watched 2 coworkers get what I had asked for weeks before they did. It took 2 months to get mine. Similar things would happen whenever I requested anything. I needed more RAM installed in my PC for months because I was expected to edit red footage. It took 5 months and a writer being kind enough to do it for me when the numerous requests I sent in were ignored or put off. I would go to management for help and get told I could handle it myself. Eventually, I was pulled into a meeting for insubordination because I had gone around the system for requesting RAM after I was ignored for months and dealing with my PC crashing and losing work daily. This is unbelievably frustrating. It seems like a few of the managers at LMG had a weird vendetta against Madison, on top of being extremely predatory, creepy guys in general. She describes another instance like this where she requested a $15 notebook, only after maybe making $25 worth of purchases so far at the company. She requested the notebook to help with her, quote, poor time management skills. And they denied it, saying, you don't need it, you have lined paper. It's amazing how cheap this company can sound with every single response they give. She says, I was upset and responded back that this was different. No. Then, bam, another meeting. Madison, why were you so rude and non-communicative with this manager? I didn't mean to be, I was told no. But then I got in trouble because they said they didn't know I was still upset. Cut to me later at my desk, I get a message saying, I did know you were still upset because you never emailed me back. In this meeting, they had lied in front of Linus to make her look bad, and worst of all, she knew if she brought this up, she would be the one getting reprimanded for tattling. It's incredible how the leadership at this company just acts like parents controlling their chaotic children when the employees are just looking for basic respect. Her job was further belittled, facing numerous times where she'd be asked to check up on socials or do little jobs during the weekend because it's social media, so Is it really working? She wraps up the thread with a few enlightening comments saying, "When I left, I was told they would announce I parted ways from the company on the WAN show. I said, no, unless you make sure you clearly state I quit. Then they never mentioned it on the WAN show." She then talks about an HR meeting recording which leaked shortly after Madison left the company in 2021. In the recording, you'll hear inappropriate jokes and you'll hear the situation be belittled. I actually didn't even know about this HR meeting recording, and I'm 33 pages into the script with no end in sight, so this is pretty exciting. Let's talk about what happens in this short 4-minute behind-the-scenes audio tape from 2021 shortly after Madison left the company. Linus starts by saying,
"We need to have a quick chat about the best way to handle HR-related feedback and rumors. We won't be giving any names for what I hope are extraordinarily obvious reasons, but what we can do is give you the following guidelines for problem solving and conflict resolution. Sorry that this is all boring and corporate, but here we are."
First he says,
"Always stand up for what's right. We're only a team as long as we're all working together and looking out for each other. That's the most important one."
Linus sounds like he's running a startup company where they try to get away with overworking and harassing you because you're all part of one big happy family. Second, he says,
"Always reflect on your own personal experiences and use your common sense."
Hey, that's kind of like how Linus reflected and used his common sense when telling Madison to ignore the recent passing of her brother. He continues, "Few things in life are always black and white."
Few things in life are truly black and white.
Immediately trying to throw shade on any legitimate concerns the Glassdoor review might have. Then he adds,
"Always wait to hear both sides of a story before passing your own judgment."
always wait for both sides of the story before passing judgment. Why is he giving his managers marching orders like this? Like they saw the Glassdoor review with the complaints, and he's trying to Men in Black erase their minds with a memory flash or whatever. Continuing with,
"Be cautious when you know that one side is bound by legal and ethical disclosure guidelines when the other is not."
he has such a way of explaining every criticism of the company in the most guilty sounding way possible, only to add,
"Carefully consider what it says about the character of someone who would engage in that type of gossip against someone who has no power to defend themselves."
Like, come on. This is unbelievably toxic abuser manipulation language, and he hasn't even explained what the meeting's about yet. How are you even going to say a sentence like this as if the company is the one that has no power to defend themselves? You're a complete idiot. Then he recommends that
"If you receive feedback about somebody else at this company, the first response is, 'Have you spoken with this person?' followed closely by, 'You need to speak with this person.'"
yeah, Linus, that sounds like a great freaking idea to tell your creepy managers to go solve their groping problems by directly talking to their victims. He explains the process.
"So first, you advise them to take the problem to their manager, followed by me or Yvonne, followed by our third-party HR firm."
I imagine if you can't go to your asshole manager or ignore your dead brother, Linus, the HR firm is just going to collect your complaints and then, I guess, send them back to Linus.
"Since I'm not at liberty to share any details about what occurred, all I can do is ask that you trust me and Yvonne."
It sounds like a cult more than it is a company. He then adds,
"We can't solve problems we don't know about, though."
like, dude, you've known about these problems with Madison and I'm sure other people for years. You, Linus Tech Tips, the person, not the company, has failed to solve any problems whatsoever. And you're traumatizing employees. He then asks the room if they know about the anonymous feedback form.
"If you would prefer to provide your feedback anonymously, we have an option for that as well. It's the manager and coworker feedback form. Yvonne, if you're not aware of it, show of hands who is not aware of it." Okay, a lot of people aren't aware of it. Good, so now we all know.
Then he wraps up the meeting with a dumb corporate joke, and everybody laughs.
Does anybody else have any questions? Not a single question? Wow, that must have been a really good speech.
All talk, no action whatsoever. Going back to the Madison thread, this was her reaction to the leaked HR phone call. Imagine someone calls you dog shit, and the response you get is, "Oh no, go talk to them about it." But it keeps happening because there's no record of it, because you were instructed to just go talk to them, not HR, who also just happens to be an active owner of the company. That's unreal that the HR department is an active owner of the company. It's more like a PR department that's going to stifle any negative comments in the interest of profit going up. But those are the main points going through Madison's thread, exposing LTT for fostering a toxic workplace environment of abuse and harassment. Absolutely disgusting and disappointing to hear, but like she says at the end of the thread, this is not at all surprising. The writing was always on the wall. Jumping forward for a second into the future, Madison clarified some more details on the hiring process. LTT first posted publicly about her getting hired, only to then after give her a completely different and worse contract than they initially agreed on. She says, "This is an unfair position to be in as a prospective employee. It makes negotiating your employment very odd when now millions of people know you were supposed to get hired and would speculate on why it fell through." But recently she found out that it goes against BC law to publicly announce someone is interviewing or has applied for a position in your company without their permission. She says this has happened multiple times on their podcast. They'd announced she was applying for a role, which she never shared publicly, and then a week later say, oh, she didn't get the job. She was even asked during the interview process to not speak about it publicly. Then she'd go online and see, oh, the choice was taken away. So, extremely shady hiring practices on top of every allegation we already shared. Where do we go from here? Well, absolute rock bottom. Because I'm sure as many of you know, just a few hours later at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, the LTT channel uploaded a 21-minute apology video. Doing this only after uploading the apology to their paywalled floatplane page. This unreal bottom-of-the-barrel move was called out by users on Twitter, with Linus responding via comment. I could publish it anytime, but I thought I'd give the FP folks a bit of early access, like the good old days, and to say thanks for sticking around while everyone else waits with bated breath. I really appreciate you guys for not jumping to conclusions. Oh my god, lock this guy up again. Can't seem to take even the slightest bit of criticism without whining and sucking off his entire company's bare butt, balls, and back. Paywalling your apology video is worse than the freaking ukulele Colleen Ballinger non-apology. But not long after, Linus publicly uploaded what has to be one of the most watered down corporate non-speak apologies the platform has ever seen. The apology begins with a man that I've never seen in all my years of watching videos from this channel. The saga has been so long that I already forgot about it, but back in May, just about 2 months ago, Linus stepped down as the CEO of LMG and Taryn Tong took over, coming from leadership at other big companies like Dell and Corsair. At this point, it definitely seems like Linus just wanted some sort of fall or buffer guy for when all of this stuff came out. And at this point, it's not working. This is proven by the beginning of this apology video, where Taryn Tong introduces himself to the channel for the first time ever by blankly staring into a teleprompter, obviously reading off a script. And I'm sure Linus wrote it out for him.
I'm speaking today because of the recent community outcry demanding change. I'm here because I agree with the community. We do have a lot of work to do.
So what, you're telling me that Linus doesn't agree with the community outcry? So that's why he's not the first guy here? I don't know. You think they addressed the Madison situation? Not even close. Taryn goes on a tangent and starts listing off random nonsense about his history building gaming PCs. It's like, this channel's called Linus Tech Tips. Where's the apology? Who is this gray-haired man trying to relate to the youth? He says,
I'm only 6 weeks into the job, but in that time I've seen a lot. I've looked at some budgeting, some team building, and operations. But my main focus has been to be a fly on the wall and gain an understanding of what's going right and what's going wrong. There's a lot of both.
6 weeks, and you're in the opening of the apology video? That alone is cruel and unusual torture. In 6 weeks, he probably only saw managers abusing their workers like a dozen times or so. And then he wraps up his first introduction to the channel by doing a goddamn fake sponsor segue.
I've asked the team to unflinchingly address both the concerns that have been raised and how we intend to fix them, with the money we'll make from our sponsor.
This is not funny. The way Linus forces his employees to think or act about any criticism the channel faces is completely embarrassing. They have yet to handle one situation with any grace or human touch whatsoever. It's all just fake humor, corporate statements, and ignoring objective accusations. After this, Linus throws his wife in front of the bus to apologize for his grindset mentality and how she's tried to rein him in for years, now that they aren't fighting for survival anymore.
In fact, in some ways, it's our efforts to keep doing more and keep doing better that have created our current situation.
Trying to paint Linus as just some hardworking guy that is trying to do his best, rather than a CEO who's been overworking employees to the point of just straight up lying to consumers about the products they review. Also, it's brain dead thinking to throw people in front of the camera that aren't camera trained or do content try to do this apology. You can tell the entire time it's extremely obvious they're just reading off the teleprompter. You can see their eyes going back and forth. There's no blinking and they're just blankly staring into the camera. No matter what they say, everything feels like it just comes off completely meaningless.
I agree with the community, so I'm putting my foot down. Effective immediately, all YouTube video production is on pause. And our teams are going to be spending this entire next week focusing on long-term workflow changes to make our content better in a lasting way.
Like, no, you need way more than a week. You need months, if not half a year, to fix all of the management issues within the company. Take half a year off and make Linus get therapy. And immediately following her talking about how they're going to take a week off to focus on improvement, teleprompter has her complain about how many daily uploads they're going to miss. Because literally every single explanation is about money for them. She also announces that they'll be pulling back on their upload schedule once they return until they get their house in order. Continuing to say that
Linus made a clear and egregious judgment error regarding retesting a product he felt was impractical. That was wrong, and I've told him so.
Why doesn't she explicitly name Billet Labs or Pwnage in this situation? They literally give no apology for how they auctioned off Billet's expensive prototype and forced them to halt development. Every time LMG responds to some controversy, they always keep things vague and never admit fault. It's extremely concerning behavior to see, revealing the company or just Linus's inability to see faults in their work whatsoever. Next up, Linus shoves this guy, Gary, in front of the camera. Again, obviously not camera trained. Gary is one of the most boring people I've ever listened to. He says,
"So our team will be spending our week publishing living documents for our testing standards and opening them up to feedback from the community and our peers in the industry, should they wish to participate."
Hey Gary, have you ever thought about just not posting false information and maybe start from there? Also, the way this guy says
from the community
and
in the industry
is like the fakest teleprompter speak I've ever heard. It's so obvious they just took the first take of this. He goes on to claim that with any videos containing labs data, they'll go back and ensure there's full corrections made. For some reason here at the end of his segment, he adds,
"I don't agree with every criticism that's been leveled at my team."
What the hell do you mean you don't agree with every criticism leveled at your team? The Gamers Nexus video contains so little actual opinion that all of the criticism was just straight up screenshots of misinformation in your videos. Why does every single leader at this company have to be so unwilling to accept any responsibility for straight up obvious mistakes? He goes on to make more meaningless semantics arguments about how they don't test for every video, but they test for every project. Nobody knows what you're talking about, Gary. Just stop posting obviously fake test results. He says
"We will do a vlog-style video on Floatplane about our testing from start to finish, so you can see how the sausage is actually made."
Thanks, Gary. That sounds creepy and it's paywalled. He ends by again whining about how it'll be a busy week for them, not making videos. And finally, Linus shows up in this apology. Psych, it's this guy James, who immediately starts, and I don't know where the hell he's looking. "My eyes are up here, James. My eyes are up here." He goes on to describe a common situation at the company.
"There have been times when an internal video review caught an incorrect graph, resulting in new versions of the graph being created, only for those new graphs to not be put in the video."
Adding that just about every error that's appeared in a video over the past year has directly resulted in a process change designed to prevent that specific issue. But this isn't working. Then he notes that during their time off, they'll still be uploading their scheduled to release videos. Guys, your apology has 142,000 dislikes. Maybe hold off for a few months. He continues with more corporate speak about how they still want to have fun and be goofy guys. But the CPU and GPU videos will require more attention to detail. Then he says,
"Not only did the community love our 4060 review, but our team found it less stressful to put out. Have we had a flawless victory? No."
Are you kidding? You haven't posted a single review of a product that hasn't required corrections? At the end of his spiel, James says that they'll soon be announcing details of a crowdsourced fact-checking system, so all of the content's correctness can satisfy even the most discerning community members. Like, guys, just post correct information. Every other person in this apology montage doesn't have to announce a new platform. Just focus on getting things right and stop adding more work to your already overworked employees. Okay, so with James crossed off the lineup for this apology concert, we move on to another guy that's not Linus. For whatever reason, Ed, the head of their production team, gets on screen and just straight up admits,
I've seen some examples where we've failed to see the forest for the trees and allowed well-edited but erroneous content to slip through the cracks.
like, they shoved Ed up here for no reason. He's literally just the head of the editing team. He doesn't know anything about the specs of the products they're testing or what's right or what's wrong, so how is he supposed to catch any of the errors? Linus put him in here for no other reason than just to spread the blame even further. Next, things only get worse. Nick, their COO, gets rolled out and immediately plugs their online merch store.
That's not my department, so I'm throwing it over to Nick.
Hold on. I'm mostly on the product side. LTTstore.com. What? Somebody had to say it.
Yep, for the folks keeping track at home, that's already 2 sponsor segues in this apology already.
But the theme of today's video is transparency and accountability.
Saying the theme of today's video is transparency and accountability while blankly staring into a teleprompter has to be illegal. He then admits that their fact-checking process hasn't always been perfect and that corrections are often made quickly. And he'll be focused on helping build a set of guidelines for our pre-release reviews and trying to set up a system that allows our team to take a finer look at every aspect of the videos. Then wraps up his portion of the video by plugging their goddamn screwdriver.
Everyone here will be so aligned with our mission that my input is no longer needed, and I can focus my full attention on making little widgets that you don't need, but definitely want. Like this retro-themed screwdriver.
Yep, let's add another one to the board. That's 3 sponsor segues so far. Following this, Linus still doesn't come on video. Instead, the CEO, Taryn, comes back out again for his second time, just to say,
I guarantee there will be future mistakes.
Thanks, Taryn. Very insightful. He states that the situation with the Pwnage mouse
is a perfect example of the kind of breakdown that should never happen again.
I'm not sure what the CEO of Linus Media Groups thinks a review or an unboxing is called, but it's sure as hell not called a breakdown. He goes on to acknowledge that they did make a tone-deaf correction following the mouse situation in the pinned comments. After this, Taryn whines more about how as CEO he has to worry about keeping the lights on and ensuring staff is well taken care of, while spending money on fun stuff, which includes doing sponsorships and merch sales. He then describes a recent situation in which a sponsor contacted them with a lot of money asking for a cream puff piece.
I was on a call with a potential partner recently. They asked for a cream puff piece. What's a cream puff piece? That's when they're like, how much money do we have to give you just so that you tell the story that we want?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody on the planet calls it that. It's a puff piece. I've never heard anybody say cream puff piece. This entire apology is just so robotic. But then he uses the situation to brag about the morals of LMG and how they turned down the offer immediately. Meanwhile, they initially paywalled their apology, and we already have 2 merch ads thus far in the video. Not to mention the multiple investments and partnerships that Gamers Nexus mentioned in their video earlier. He then wraps up his now second segment in this apology by sucking off the company more for turning down sponsors ranging from thousands of dollars per year to hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. It's like, cool dude, just stop your company from posting misinformation. Nobody gives a shit about turning down sponsors. So who do you think we have next? Because it's sure as shit not Linus Tech Tips. It's Colton. Apparently the guy in charge of their incredible HR department. And this guy shuffles out to promote LinusTechTips.com, giving people some random ass forum thread to post their complaints in.
It's up to my team to vet incoming sponsor requests and deal with issues that you, our viewers, have with our brand partners. One way we do that is using our LMG sponsor discussion subforum on LinusTechTips.com to create a dialogue between our business team and the community.
Yeah, guys, don't go on Twitter and complain where everybody can see it. Come to our weird website, to this niche little forum page, and post all your complaints there so we can just completely ignore them. He then goes on to weirdly bring up complaints about brands and how they sometimes take forever to respond to messages or address problems.
Most content creators can attest to the fact that brands sometimes take forever to respond to messages or address problems.
Kind of like how LMG just straight up stopped replying to Billet Labs until the Gamers Nexus video. But finally, 13 minutes into the video, their first actual apology, Colton says sorry for auctioning off the prototype.
Finally, I want to apologize to Billet Labs for auctioning off their monoblock at LTX 2023. Our processes failed when I was selecting items to include in the charity auction, but then it was compounded because when the issue was brought up to me via email, even though I replied 2 hours later apologizing and offering to pay for the component, I forgot to actually include our contact in that email.
Which, I don't understand how this actually happens. How do you mess up this bad and then not follow up the next day trying to ensure that you get an invoice to rectify the situation? They just let this situation go until the Gamers Nexus video came out. And then at the end of his segment, Colton disgustingly tries to throw Billet Labs under the bus for not coming to LMG to find out who won the silent auction.
Side note, that same team, God bless them, didn't ask our event team who won the silent auction items and proceeded to email everyone asking. We don't need any of that. Certainly not for tax purposes.
Colton, you're in an entirely backward situation right now. Genuinely, I would shut up. Nothing about what you did was right. Just take the L and grow up. This is the head of their HR department, the guy that jumps on and immediately complains about the way brands are acting. That's literally the reason why you're in an apology video right now, Colton. It's because you guys were the ones that treated some smaller companies like complete garbage. How can you even be the ones that are mad right now?
I clearly need to spend some of my week training the team, unless I actually get fired for real this time.
You're telling me the head of your ethics department almost got fired before, and he's the head of ethics? But Colton gets out of the way, and Luke, the co-host of the WAN Show podcast, sits down to join the apology train. He starts by poking fun at Linus's previous Trust Me Bro warranty and privateering incidents.
This might ring a little hollow, coming from one half of the WAN Show team that brought you Trust Me Bro and the privateering incident, among others. We do need to be respectful and conscious of the impact of our words. We should be proud of the work that we do, but we shouldn't negatively compare ourselves to our fellow tech reviewers. When issuing corrections, we need to apologize. We need to respect people's time and their money.
Which I'm pretty sure everything in this apology so far can pretty much apply to Linus alone. Yet, he hasn't even shown up, saying even more about his inability to be upfront about any of his mistakes. Adding,
"We're still f***ing up a lot, and we need to own that, fix it, and move on, not be defensive or shirk blame."
Again, Linus. And finally, Luke mentions that one of his unmentioned and unrelated responsibilities is
keeping Linus from driving off various cliffs, which I have failed at a number of times.
Obviously, it's not Luke's job to keep Linus from throwing a fit like a child just because the community provides some light criticism. But speaking of Linus, 16 minutes into the Linus Tech Tips apology video, Linus actually shows up. Under the cringy chapter text, a wild Linus appears. He starts by saying that
I was the one at the head of the company for each and every mistake that our community has rightly brought to our attention. And once again, I made things worse by allowing myself to respond emotionally.
Then he goes on to paint the criticism he's received in an extremely bad faith light, saying,
It's honestly really hard when people take an internal process error and then they run that all the way to Linus is a thief and wants to auction someone else's intellectual property to the highest bidder, or accuses me of trying to brush something under the rug just because I do think it's important to get all the details before declaring me to be a low-down liar, straight-up piece of
See, this is the problem. Anytime Linus addresses criticism, he has to victimize himself in a completely inaccurate way to how people are actually objectively calling him out. It's wrong and impossible to work with somebody that just can't shut up and take the consequences of owning up to their actions. He always has something to say despite being more and more in the wrong. Linus, get off Reddit and actually address the concerns of your employees and peers in the industry. People shit-talking you online aren't the ones providing objective criticism of you. Using random internet comments as strawmen in an argument to victimize yourself does not work. Linus gets into the Billet Labs situation.
There's no way around it. That's our bad. But the delay in communication, the one that prompted the post that you guys just saw, it was less than 2 business days.
But in no way does he apologize for straight up selling the prototype and forcing their business development to stall. But he does throw Colton under the bus for not checking with him or Yvonne.
Which happened on the 10th, before we were under any pressure to do so, and without Colton even bothering to check with me or Yvonne before just saying, go for it. He knows that our internal policy is to do the right thing. So he tried, bless him. I guess his job is safe for another day.
You can't make jokes like that, especially about your employee whose mistake it never really was. Linus was actually in the Billet Labs video mishandling and improperly testing the product, and he was in the comments and follow-up podcasts bashing the company despite his mistakes. So much of the Billet Labs situation is due to the inappropriate review of the product and the repeated follow-up misinformation spread by Linus himself. And then he starts crying for some reason and has to stop himself.
I'm sorry, I guess I've actually gotten a little bit emotional here again, so I'm going to stop there because whatever's being said about me and whatever's being said about the team should never have allowed my feelings to distract from any valid criticism of our work.
Like, Linus, you mishandled a sponsor situation. Your ice cream didn't fall on the ground.
My decision, for example, to not bother retesting the monoblock, that was obviously wrong, and my lame response on the forum was a huge and unnecessary blunder. I owe you guys better, and I'm sorry.
He finishes with some basic lines about how he loves the community and wants to make the best content he can, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the apology, for no reason whatsoever, they bring back out the boring freaking CEO to ramble more about his life's work and shit. And then he actually ends the apology with another fake sponsor segue.
Thank you all for holding us accountable. I feel ready for the challenge and ready for this message from our sponsor.
Just kidding, again. But D-Brand did offer.
That's 4 sponsor segues in their apology video. I feel like there's nothing I need to add to that for it to tell you exactly how the community felt following the apology. The dislikes are nearly passing up the likes at this point on the video. The comments are filled with banger after banger like, well, this certainly takes us back to Linus's own words. Always judge a company based on how they respond to criticism. Just absolutely roasting them. And to make matters extremely worse, if you didn't notice, they didn't mention the Madison thread or the criminal allegations within it a single time. And right from the beginning, as soon as the apology was uploaded, the comments were flooded with things like, okay, cool, now address the Madison situation. And you think this would worry the company, right? If their apology starts getting big and all the comments are about Madison, then people might find out about the thread. Well, apparently me and other people on Twitter just straight up saw them deleting any and all comments related to the Madison situation underneath the apology. Immediately when the apology got posted, I knew I was going to make a video about this stuff, so I started watching it within the first 15 minutes. Nearly 9 out of every 10 comments was related to the Madison situation. Now if you scroll through the comments, there's hardly any, but still nobody's saying anything positive. However, Madison's thread with the allegations didn't go unnoticed, with enough of the community making noise about the allegations in the thread and forcing the hand of the new CEO. The Verge reached out to Taryn regarding the accusations, and he was, quote, shocked at the allegations and the company described in Madison's post. He went on to say that, as part of this process, beyond an internal review, we'll also be hiring an outside investigator to look into the allegations and will commit to publishing the findings and implementing any corrective actions that may arise because of this. It'll be interesting to see how the story develops, like if any more employees feel empowered to come forward and share additional details about mismanagement, abuse, and harassment within LMG. We can only hope that they actually do something right for a change and run the investigations properly, but I'm not sure I could even bet on that. So that's where everything in the story is at so far. But before I ask you whether or not you think Linus is guilty of everything his company's been accused of in this video, let's talk about what happened at 6 a.m. Pacific time, about 2 hours after the apology was posted. Linus called up XQC, of all people, famous for recently being canceled over stealing content, and complained to him about how he's the one that's being canceled now.
It's like 6 in the morning, okay? I'm about to go to, I'm waking up. Well, I'm about to go to bed. And my phone rings, and out of anybody, it's fucking Linus, dude. Right? And dude, he just said the same thing I said on fucking Reddit, dude. He said, damn, dude, how the fucking, I don't know where he said it, but he's like, holy shit, dude. It was you, now it's me or something like that, you know? Like, oh man, oh man.
So before we wrap things up, I know it's a lot, but let's quickly recap everything we covered. But I'm gonna explain everything in chronological order to when it actually happened. Here we go. July 2022, Madison, a former LTT social media employee, posted an anonymous Glassdoor review on the LTT page alleging multiple cases of workplace harassment and abuse. Shortly following this, Linus gathered the company for an HR phone call, in which he laid out some ground rules on how to report problematic situations to upper management. August of 2022, LTT is in hot water for their Trust Me Bro warranty backpack scandal. And Gamers Nexus posts a video stating that they'll have to start treating their reviews of LTT products more objectively, like how they'd report on a large company like Walmart or Alienware. Jumping ahead to May 2023, Linus steps down as CEO of Linus Media Group, taking on the Chief Vision Officer role instead. Fast forward to the end of July 2023, an LTT employee says during a video tour of one of its testing labs, what sets LTT apart from other content creators in the space like Gamers Nexus and Hardware Unboxed is that LTT runs new tests for every project, every time. 4 days later, on August 2nd, Hardware Unboxed responded in a Twitter thread questioning LTT's credibility and expressing their disappointment in the comment. 2 days after that, on the 4th, Linus comments on the situation during a live stream of the WAN Show podcast, also bringing up past controversy with the Trust Me Bro warranty backpack situation and how Gamers Nexus covered them back then. After that, 10 full days go by, and on August 14th, Gamers Nexus responds to the LTT employee's comments in the tour video and Linus's comments on the podcast in a 44-minute video detailing multiple issues with LTT's data reporting and testing, as well as 2 notable problems with recent product reviews, in which Linus let his emotions fuel a poor initial rating, followed by an ego-driven, malicious defense of his wrong actions. This video also revealed that LTT auctioned off one of those product manufacturers named Billet Labs' main prototype, which resulted in heavily delayed development, setting back their small 2-person company. Linus responded not long after with an emotion-driven forum post in which he claims journalistic malpractice against Gamers Nexus, but he recognizes that he needs to do better, but then he triples down on the Billet Labs situation. The very next day, Gamers Nexus comes back and responds in their next video, strongly condemning Linus's forum response for its purposely misleading wording and inability to own up to objective criticism. And the next day, on August 16th at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, a former LTT social media employee named Madison posted a thread on Twitter with many allegations involving workplace abuse and harassment she faced from coworkers and managers while employed at LTT. A few hours later, users on Twitter revealed that LTT had uploaded their 21-minute apology video under their Floatplane paywall, with Linus leaving a poor taste comment as his defense. Soon after, at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, the full apology video went public on YouTube. Throughout the video, multiple off-camera LTT workers are made to read corporate statements off teleprompters, while others come in for just a moment to take on some of the blame. All while Mr. Linus Tech Tips himself doesn't come on screen until 16 minutes into the video. Despite this entire apology being a reaction to his inaccurate, emotion-driven rants on both the forum and podcasts. They also find a way to fit 2 fake sponsor segments and 2 real merch ads inside their apology video. Following this, LTT is found responding to comments under the apology defensively, as well as scrambling to delete any and all comments related to the Madison situation, which they failed to address at all in their apology video. Later that day, the media outlet The Verge reached out to the new CEO of LMG, Taryn Tong, for comment on the Madison allegations. He responded, saying he was shocked by the allegations and promised to hire an outside investigator to look into them and will commit to publishing any of the findings and implementing any corrective actions that may arise because of it. Following the CEO's email getting released by The Verge, we found XQC running his mouth that Linus was calling him hours after the LTT apology went public, complaining about being canceled. And there we go. That is everything I could put together on the situation so far. There may be more details to come, but that was definitely my biggest video ever. But I felt that it was a story that needed all of the details to come to light, and there's just layers upon layers of context. If you made it to the end, I genuinely appreciate you watching everything. I probably spent literally like 40 hours worth of work by the end of like editing this video. I hope it was worth it. Let me know your comments on the entire situation. What surprised you the most about this story? What didn't surprise you? And if you in any way want more random internet drama or news coverage, please, please, please subscribe. And send me any news topics that you'd like me to cover over on my TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Seth MacFarlane, I wanna make you my Seth MacDarlin. I'm just now getting things started. I'm making heat like it's porridge. Cause I'm ahead of the game. Ahead of the game. I got a head of hair, but I'm losing it.